How did I become an author for Rus Kids? What's your name? Sorry.
Abigail.
Abigail, nice to meet you, Abigail. That's a good question. The funny thing is I was actually hired to work for Rus Kids before I ever started writing for them. What I did was, the quizzes that come with the books and stuff like that on Rus Kids, I helped make those when I first started, and then I just kept annoying them, saying, I want to write, let me write something, let me write. And eventually they let me write, and my very first book for Rus Kids, or for Learning A to Z, which is the big company that owns Rus Kids, but my first book for them was How Frogs Grow. It's at level C. It's a very simple book, but it was very complicated to write as my first book.
Cool.
Hi, Layla.
Is writing digital books just like writing a regular paperback book?
Ooh, that's a good one. The writing process is not that much different. The difference really comes after the initial writing process, because with digital books, you have a lot more flexibility, you have a lot more ways to do different types of things within the books and different sort of lengths. Whereas with print books, a print book is far more expensive. It's really expensive for the company to create and put out. And so those tend to go through a lot more reviews, a lot more editorial reviews, a lot more people making sure everything is just perfect, because to print a book and then send it out, and it's very expensive if they find a mistake and they need to fix it. Whereas a digital book, it's a lot easier to fix mistakes and you can do a lot faster. So the idea from the Holo Kids actually was my idea, because I was looking at the time, I was an executive editor, which is like the editor who's in charge of all the other editors that are making all of the books for Learning A to Z. And so I was like the right below the head honcho.
Nice.
And I was looking through all of our books, and I noticed that Learning A to Z had a really big lack of appropriate scary books. I mean, kids, you guys like scary books. You like mysteries and stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Learning A to Z just did not have enough of those. And so I was like, I want to do a really good, honest to goodness ghost story for kids. I want a ghost story for kids. And so my boss at the time said, go for it. So I wrote The Holo. It did need to be rewritten because, like I said, my process is a little bit different. I don't go through multiple rewrites. And honestly, it's good to be the boss. Okay, let's start with the first question. All great questions. Can you say the first one again? Sorry.
Where did you come up with the clues?
Where did I come up with the clues? That was actually fun. So I did not plan anything of the Holo Kids. So I wrote The Holo thinking that it was going to be a singular book. And that was going to be it. We have our one little scary book and we don't have to do anything more. But it became popular, and they wanted to turn it into a series, because that was another thing that Learning A to Z needed more of. They needed more interesting and engaging fiction series for students in your grade levels. So there was no really big plan. So I just sort of started writing, and I kept writing through, and then I started realizing that in the first couple of books I had started dropping clues. I like to do this a lot in my writing, especially on bigger pieces. I write, I put in little clues, little things that I don't know what they're going to be. I don't know what they mean, and then I figure out how to put them all together later. Much further down the road. And that's what happened with the Hollow Kids. All those clues, all that stuff, I was making it up as I went along. And then as I got further along, I was like, okay, now I actually need to resolve or deal with or handle all of these clues and things that I've been dropping. And I have to make it all make sense. And so then you transition or you change or turn in your writing from creating the clues to answering the clues, and you can kind of do that back and forth within the stories, and you'll see that I do that back and forth. And I absolutely consider this series more like a television series, like where each book is an episode in a television series that builds up to an overarching. But you can absolutely think of them as chapters in a book, because it works just like that. As well, it's a little bit more structured and a little bit more episodic, where each chapter really can stand alone in the Hollow Kids, kind of like episodes in a television series. Whereas in a novel, it's not very often that you can just read one chapter and it can stand alone by itself. Sometimes, but not always. So I kind of think of it that way. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you.
A story that I was told in my childhood that was a sort of a legend or a myth from when I was a kid, from the area that I grew up in, about there was a similar story to what happened at the mill there. And so I sort of took that and I tweaked it a little bit and made it work for this set of stories.
Sell it to them.
That's a very good question. Because I do not have an agent. Most of my work is done it's called work for hire, which is the publisher reaches out to me and says, we have a book that we need written, or mostly it's fiction. Sometimes it's nonfiction, but a lot of times it's fiction or poetry or plays. I do a lot of plays as well. They reach out to me and they say, we need a short story for grade 3 that's about monsters, or we need a passage at grade 5 for this. So most of the work that I do is they come to me and they say, we need this. I write it for them, and then they own it. I give up the ownership. I have no copyright ownership of that. So I don't own the Hollow Kids. Learning A to Z does. So because it was a work for hire agreement, they own it. It's all theirs. So the way that I work is a little bit different than the way that other writers do work, because there are writers that are, when you get more published out, if you want to be published in like Barnes and Noble and Amazon and with the big name publishers, generally you do need to get an agent. And it does, and the process does work the way that you described, where the agent is the one that contacts the publishers and says, "Hey, I have a client who has this piece ready that's ready to be published. Help us publish it." So it's a little bit different. I tend not to create a ton of content just independently by myself. I'm someone who generally needs a little bit of a push. So I really like having assignments. I like someone saying, I need a series of 10 books on, a mystery, and I will happily do that. Because then that gives me, I just need that more direction. I'm not as self-motivated as I probably should.